us violated, we would have been prosecuted long, long ago.
Nicole Wallace, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. And I want to also thank the great...
I second Rachel. I'm glad you're in the chair. Very glad you're in the chair, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I suspect we're all going to be in the chair tomorrow, spending some time together. I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing. Thank you, Nicole Wallace, Rachel Maddow. Thank you very much. The great Maya Wiley, Harry Littman, Ellie Mistal, who is here with me, Ari Melber. We brought the big guns in tonight, and now we're going to continue to bring Ryan Riley. I want to thank him as well, and everyone who was here with us tonight. I want to throw it to another big gun. Chris Hayes, I toss it to you, my friend. This is one of the biggest nights, I think, for any of us who are in this business. It is a night of pathos, not of joy, in the sense that the American Republic is having to witness the sort of denigration of the presidency, or the former presidency, in the form of the apparently now confirmed indictment of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, there's something so different about the Manhattan District Attorney indicting Donald Trump for actions that he took in the run-up to him becoming the president in that hush money payment scheme. We have a multi-jurisdictional form of justice. There are different jurisdictions for different crimes. The United States Department of Justice, I mean, this is the sort of republic at its, defending itself against itself in some senses here. It does feel, right? I mean, it feels like we're at the kind of, when you talk about these, like all the cliches we use about guardrails or what the sort of binding constraint of the law is, right? Like, this is actually the thing that we're now formally testing, right? The test is upon us. We knew it was coming. I'm wondering how you're feeling about it tonight.
Well, I mean, the reality is that if a former president can commit any crime, then we have a king and not a president. Then that means that by becoming president, you achieve immunity from the law. And I think the test here for Merrick Garland and the Justice Department was whether or not they were going to essentially immunize Donald Trump from any and all conduct. And we knew that the DA in Manhattan said he wasn't going to do it, but that is a state doing it, right? We anticipate that we don't know what Fonnie Willis is going to do. But if the federal government can say that by getting this one job that you have for 4 or 8 years, you are now free to conduct any level of criminality, and including criminality that involves our national security. What happened on January 6th was unimaginable, I think, to you, to me, to any of us, that a president could attempt a coup to stay in power that would have involved the killing of his vice president. Donald Trump's conduct has been so beyond the pale that if this hadn't happened, I think I would have started to question whether there was a rule of law. I think that this is the natural outcome when you do the things that Donald Trump has done. And so I'm actually relieved that our system actually does have what do appear to be real guardrails. And as you said, that the executive branch is willing to act against its former self.
That's very well said. Joy, thank you so much for the toss, and thank you for your able helming there in that previous hour. If you're just joining us, we do have truly breaking news tonight. Historic news that everyone said was coming, that everyone anticipated for weeks and months was coming. Donald Trump, former president of the United States, has been indicted. He has been indicted for a second time in less than 3 months. And this time, he has been indicted in federal court by the U.S. Department of Justice Special Counsel Jack Smith, his office, their criminal investigation into the handling of classified documents. NBC News reports that the indictment is reportedly under seal. Now, it was just a few minutes ago that the world learned of that, which came from Trump himself. He was the first to break the news tonight, wrote, quote, "The corrupt Biden administration has informed my attorneys that I have been indicted. The ex-president has received a summons to appear in federal court in Miami this Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Special counsel's office has issued no comment to NBC News. That would align with our reporting that the indictment is under seal, which would, of course, preclude, as a matter of DOJ policy, any official confirmation. Trump writing tonight, "I never thought it possible that this could happen to a former U.S. president." In all caps, the end there, "I am an innocent man." Tonight's break the glass news, of course, makes Donald Trump the first ever president to be federally criminally indicted, though we should note Richard Nixon was heading there before he was pardoned by Gerald Ford, quite controversially, in the 1970s. Now, we don't know a lot more than what I've just told you in terms of the substance of what's in that sealed document, what the exact charges are, how many counts. We have not seen the indictment. I want to bring in, though, MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin, who has been down sort of court watching in Florida, where that second grand jury has been operating. Lisa, your reaction to the news?
No, Chris, on one level, I'm not surprised at all because we have been building to this moment really since last August when we first learned about the FBI's search warrant that authorized them to go to Mar-a-Lago and seize 20 plus boxes of documents, despite the representation by the former president's lawyers that they had turned over all materials responsive to a subpoena that had been issued by DOJ months and months earlier than that. On the other hand, I'm sitting in a hotel room right now in Miami, and if you had asked me where I would be when Donald Trump was indicted by the federal government, it certainly wouldn't have been here. As early this week, we all fully expected that this would happen in Washington, D.C., if at all. The fact that it's happening in Miami, and we have all so quickly had to adjust our expectations about where and why Miami is part of what has so many people, I think, out there scratching their heads, not only about this historic moment, but where exactly it's occurring and why.
So let's follow up on that. One of the concrete pieces of news we have now, which confirms much of the reporting and has confirmed your court watching in the Miami courthouse, where you've seen people coming and going clearly who are relevant to the case, including witnesses and Department of Justice officials.
Cards about
is this sort of venue
First
change,
card.
right? That this was
Just
chugging
listen.
along in Washington,
First
D.C.
card.
It clearly has shifted down to Miami. The president saying he's been summoned, the ex-president saying he's been summoned next Tuesday to Miami. Why? What do we know about when this shift happened to this jurisdiction and why?
We don't know a lot, Chris, about when this shift happened. There's been public reporting that indicated that while folks like you and me weren't watching, this grand jury in Miami was convened last month and heard from a variety of witnesses before we were here earlier this week to track down Taylor Budowich, Trump's former spokesperson, when he arrived with his lawyer, Stan Woodward. Certainly no public attention was focused on this courtroom or this courthouse, and that may be why the Department of Justice chose Miami over other places, for example, in the Southern District of Florida. But that sort of jumps over the predecessor question, which is why Florida at all, right? And Department of Justice policy generally holds
because that's
that
where
you
the
charge
little
a
people
crime
are.
where the bulk of the conduct occurs. And nowhere
where
is
the
that
witnesses
more
are.
true than where obstruction is concerned, where there's also
co-conspirators.
some case law in DC that would trend in that direction.
obstruction.
And I think one of the factors for Jack Smith and his team was, even though the jury pool in DC would have been more favorable to them, and by far, I was on Joy's show last night, and we talked about the fact that over 90% of those who voted in the 2020 election in the District of Columbia voted for Joe Biden. Notwithstanding that, and notwithstanding the fact that the judges on the whole are viewed to be probably more favorable to the special counsel, you also have to weigh that against the certainty of making the right decision on venue. Because if you make the wrong decision and either you get a conviction and it's reversed on appeal, or the defendant moves to dismiss the indictment on the basis of erroneous venue, you can't start over. There is a real problem there. And Jack Smith is also working against a clock, right? We have Donald Trump, who, while under indictment now, is also a candidate for president of the United States. And the clock for Jack Smith effectively ends on January 20th, 2025, because if Trump is reelected and he takes office, this is game over the minute he takes office, because again, you and I both know there's Department of Justice policy that says a sitting president is not subject to criminal process.
Has to change.
So he could be mid-suit
Has to change.
and mid-case, and he would just declare the whole thing over and done with. And so I think what Jack Smith is really trying to do is maximize the certainty of proceeding to a quick trial rather than one in the most advantageous place you could bring it. He'd rather be in Florida, where, as you and I have discussed many times, the majority of the conduct that's likely at issue here and the indictment we still haven't seen took place in this district, aided by a panoply of people favorable to Trump.
Lisa Rubin, thank you for that. I want you to stay with me. I'm going to just give you a few updates. We've got a whole bunch of folks lined up here to process this together. So first of all, the president, ex-president has released some sort of video on Truth Social, which we will watch before bringing you whatever news may be contained therein. We also have confirmation at this hour from NBC News. There are 7 counts in the indictment. 7 counts in the indictment. We don't know what those charges are for, but we do know there are 7 counts, at least that's what reporting indicates right now. Ari Melber is the chief legal correspondent and host of The Beat here at MSNBC. Charles Coleman is a civil rights attorney who previously worked as a prosecutor in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. Ari, let me begin with you. The sort of high-level reaction, which I think, again, expectation this would happen, all seeming indicators of it happening, always the question about this institutional test, whether the Department of Justice would go wobbly, for lack of a better word, at the moment. Would they do the thing that has never been done by the Department of Justice in this country's history and in the department's history? What do you think?
I think this is the first day of the rest of Donald Trump's life, and it's going to get a lot worse from here. He's never faced a prosecutor like Jack Smith. He's never faced an empowered prosecutor, a special counsel. We know now tonight, as you said, reporting this news, we know a few things. One, they're doing it by the book. They're not forum shopping for what might be a potentially friendlier place. By the book, based on the case and the facts they have, they're in Florida. We know now, Chris, that Attorney General Merrick Garland has approved rather than disagreed with what was the recommendation here, the planned target indictment that we've been reporting so much. There was a lot of talk about where does Garland fit into all this? Well, now we have the big answer. Jack Smith and his prosecutors and investigators developed this case. They presented it under the special counsel rules. There's much we don't know, but Chris, as you know, and I know you're steeped in law for reasons professional, familial, and otherwise, you know well that those regulations require Garland to oversee it. And if he disagreed, he'd have to tell Congress. So now tonight we know something we didn't know a few hours ago, which is Smith got the goods, Garland backed him up. What else do we know about why this is such a tough case for defendant Donald Trump, who was legally presumed innocent and afforded all the rights of any other defendant, but by virtue of his behavior, of his conduct, of his brazen lies, of his public attacks? Chris, I can tell you something that is actually a little counterintuitive tonight. Donald Trump is in a worse place than many other people with government experience or millions of dollars because of how he's acted. What I mean by that is there's a long paper trail of how he allegedly lied and instructed others to lie to the government, allegedly acted in ways that might constitute obstruction. Then, on top of that, as if that weren't enough, Diane knew, we know that an independent judge approved a warrant to go in there, and rather than finding nothing or a little something, they found everything, tons of contraband. We've seen on MSNBC those pictures of the classified documents. That's all criminal evidence. It's like heroin, but worse, okay? We know that. They found that. And he's afforded defenses about what that was or whether somehow he didn't know it was there, sure. But those pictures are bad. That's evidence. And then, Chris, the final, I won't call it a nail in the coffin, but I'll call it the final wood building a legal coffin. We know they already pierced his lawyer's privilege under the crime fraud exception because a judge, again, not Garland, not Smith, an independent federal judge also ruled that there was probable cause evidence that Trump was committing ongoing crimes with his lawyer, Mr. Corcoran, who we learned, again, only in the last few days, has been making his voice notes to try to protect himself because he doesn't want to end up like Michael Cohen in a jumpsuit because of what Trump did. Again, legally presumed innocent. Factually, a terrible uphill battle of a legal headache for Donald Trump against a prosecutor who is not afraid to go after heads of state.
Those 2 points about the judges there are really important, right? First of all, when you think about that judge back to last August, right, getting
Okay, I just want to say quickly, hello, everybody, welcome. This is very, very exciting. And also, I've been pulling some cards here on what's happening, and I just pulled some cards on the charges, and they're much like the others. I'm not getting major arcana in the sense of, this is already a big, like I have been in my daily readings, like, not that this isn't a big thing, but that it's a very step-by-step, Trump being treated like other people. There are a lot of cards here about the other people involved as well. But it ends with Ten of Swords. He's so going to lose this case. He is so going to lose this case.
With tons of power and influence and money.
So we'll listen to some more, but thank you for being here to celebrate this. I've got my popcorn pin on.
And on that score, the point that Lisa Ruin made, I think is actually an important
Hello, Becca. We are all celebrating.
highest level of difficulty if that's what it takes to preserve
Becca from House of Lenormand. Do follow House of Lenormand.
legitimacy to the endeavor as possible, which is to say, we will do it in Florida. We will do it with any jury that is there, that is a jury of his peers in South Florida. And we are confident we can make this case to whichever jury it is and whichever venue the law requires.
You know, Chris, let's take a step back and look at this from a bird's eye view. We have to talk about what prosecutors do because Jack Smith has laid out what a prosecutor actually does. Prosecutors are methodical. Prosecutors are intentional. Prosecutors are supposed to be ethical and follow the book. And Jack Smith has done that in everything that we have seen so far. And for as much pressure as there has been on him and his office to make a move, to do something, finally, we want to see something. We want to make you do whatever it is that we're expecting. Jack Smith has taken his time and now he has delivered. It is unusual for the public to have as much insight into an investigation as we have had. And part of that has only become privy to us because, number one, Donald Trump has not been able to stop talking. And number two, there's been outstanding investigative reporting done by a number of different journalists. But normally, we don't even have this level of insight into an actual investigation. And Jack Smith has stayed the course by keeping his mouth shut and making sure that his leaks were minimal to nil around how he was going about this prosecution. Now that we're here, it's important to understand that Jack Smith has actually placed himself in a great position, both principally and practically. Principally, he's placed himself in a good position. You've already hit on this because of the fact that Donald Trump has no doubt the motivation to try to make this political, to try to say that he's being attacked by weaponized DOJ. Well, when you put the case in a venue like Florida, you take that argument away because now you potentially have a jury, as Lisa has already talked about, that is perhaps more friendly to Donald Trump. And so now he can't argue, well, the venue is going to be unfriendly to me. You are in a red state. You are in a state that you won when you ran for president. You are in a state that you carried when you lost for president. And so the likelihood that you are going to find yourself in anti-Trump land is lower than you would if you were in D.C., for example. So Jack Smith has taken that argument away. Practically, a lot of people may not know this, but Florida on the federal level has a rocket docket. So that's going to move the case up and accelerate it a lot faster in terms of moving this thing closer to trial. So Jack Smith has made all of the right moves so far as a prosecutor. And it's important to understand this is what prosecutors do. Really quickly, Chris, what I'm curious to see now, because Ari alluded to this, and this has been talked about a bit.
But he's going to be
Donald Trump has been flirting with fire for a very, very long time.
Yes.
He's avoided January 6th. He's avoided the Mueller probe.
On the defensive.
He's been impeached twice, but there was no practical effect to that. Even with the indictment in Manhattan, Donald Trump has not understood this is real. And the more that I talk and open my mouth, the more trouble that I get in. Now he has become the first former president to have ever been indicted for a federal offense. I am curious to see whether he is going to double down on this for the political expediency that it affords him, or whether he will dial it back because of the legal jeopardy that it's going to put him in.
Yes.
That's a great question.
Well, of course,
an as yet unanswered one, though. If I had to bet,
stuff.
I think I know how I'd handicap it. Ari Melber and Charles Coleman, gentlemen, thank you both. Really appreciate that. I want to go down to Laura Jarrett, of course, our NBC News senior legal correspondent who has been covering this case, and she joins me now. A Rubicon here being crossed by the Department of Justice, and to Ari's point here, Merrick Garland, per DOJ policy, had to greenlight this. It doesn't just stop at Jack Smith, even though he's independent. That whole building, Merrick Garland, all the Department of Justice now behind these charges.
Well, it's interesting. You know, the Justice Department would push back on that, Chris. The Justice Department would say, Jack Smith can do this all on his own. But in reality, we all know that the buck stops with Merrick Garland. He is the Attorney General. He is the person who's been Senate confirmed. And even though he put this in the hands of Jack Smith, a dogged and formidable prosecutor, in reality, this lands at Merrick Garland. You know, the former president asked for a meeting, his lawyers did, with Merrick Garland.
He doesn't want to.
Instead, they got a meeting with Jack Smith,
Right.
and obviously we're
But
not
he's gonna
able to persuade Jack Smith not to bring these charges. I continue to find it just incredible to take a step back that this time last week, we didn't even know that the Florida piece of this existed. And yet here we are now learning that he has been indicted by a federal grand jury that was quietly working away on this. And we'll need to report out exactly what happened within DOJ to bring this all about. What exactly happened in
Breaking
DOJ
news.
to move a probe that was singing along in Washington, D.C.
Hang on, Kristen from Uncover the News. Breaking. Trump has been charged with willful retention of national defense material under the Espionage Act, amongst numerous other charges. Oh, glorious.
For months and months and months, and you want to take this to trial quickly, it makes a lot of sense to do it in Florida, where all of the operative acts appear to have happened.
That's a really, really important point. The speed here being one of the key, one of the key calculations, I think, for anyone who's involved in this case. What are you looking for when we do find out what those charges are? I suspect some of that information will leak out before then. We only know it's 7 counts, but what are you looking for in terms of what the charges are?
Yeah, I do wonder whether the Justice Department will end up going to a judge to ask for this to be unsealed, because, you know, in this information vacuum that we're in a little bit right now, we obviously know it's 7 counts. We know he's been indicted, but we haven't seen the precise charges.
Yep.
In the information vacuum, Trump fills that vacuum. And so there could be a lot of misdirection. And we've already seen some of these preemptive strikes going after the prosecutors for alleged misconduct with no backing or basis for it. And so, you know, the Justice Department could go to a judge tonight if it wanted to and ask for this to be unsealed. I'm not saying that they will, but they could if they wanted to. What I'm mostly looking for in that indictment is to see if there's any allegation, which would be the most serious, that he actually showed any classified information to somebody who wasn't authorized to receive it. Because all along, we've understood the obstruction issues. We've obviously understood the retaining of
leave the
classified
country
documents when he didn't have the authority to do so. We have not, I think, really understood if he faces what would be very, very serious charges for disseminating, showing classified information. That would be extraordinary. If you think about the whole purpose of the Espionage Act, the idea of protecting foreign secrets from our adversaries, to have had that happen, not to show it to adversaries.
They're not going to let him.
They're
not going to let him leave the country.
Not authorized to receive it. That'd be an incredible breach for someone who used to hold
I don't know if they're going to take his passport or what, but they are not going to let him leave the country.
All right, Laura Jarrett, as always, great to get your expertise on this. We'll be
Justice
checking back,
Devil.
Thank you very much. I want to bring in
7
Ken
of
Galenian.
Cups.
He's the Justice and Intelligence Correspondent for NBC News. He's actually outside that courtroom in Miami. Ken, I know you've had your eyes peeled doing court watching all day today. It looks like the moment has arrived.
Yes.
That's right, Chris. We came here for a reason, because it became clear over the last few days that the center of gravity of this case had shifted from Washington, D.C. to here in Miami in South Florida. And we saw the senior member of the special counsel's team today come into this courthouse, and we assumed that the grand jury was meeting. But we left today not knowing an outcome.
There was mention of a rocket docket
right? We had no
in Florida. Are they going to speed this up? Is this going to happen faster than it would otherwise? I mean, I don't expect it to be over in a week, but are they going to move things along?
He's telling us here on Tuesday, and he'll go through the normal process that all federal defendants go through, including being processed by the FBI and the federal marshals. He'll be fingerprinted. There'll be a mugshot taken. That mugshot will not be released. But
there's going to be a mugshot taken.
Set of remarkable and historic things ahead of us, and some of which are going to take place here in Miami.
This indictment is sealed, and is the expectation on the timeline here? Laura Jarrett was just talking about this, and there was some question about this in terms of the sealed indictment in New York.
He's going to try to delay it.
Do we expect
but
that
that's
would
not
be
going to
unsealed
work
on Tuesday? Would we expect Department of Justice to make a motion to unseal it before then?
There'll be time to do some work, but
well, and the people I was speaking to tonight about this, the current
defense
plan
needs
is
to
that
look at
it would be
time to look through the
unsealed on
evidence.
Tuesday, when when Trump makes his first appearance. That's the normal course of things. But I think Laura has a point. It may dawn on some officials in the next 24 hours that in the vacuum created by the fact that this indictment is sealed, maybe some misinformation surfaces or just a lack of information, a lack of clarity, and Donald Trump and his lawyers are filling that vacuum. So it may be in the interest of the Department of Justice to try to move to unseal it. It's not clear to me why they
Rocket
seal
docket.
it.
Still asking about that.
Generally, indictments are
I
sealed.
got the Ten
when
of
you don't
Swords
want the target
again.
to
Legal
flee.
swords
In
and
some
his
districts, they're
metaphorical
always
back.
sealed. There may be a practice here, generally, of sealing indictments. But
Three of
in
Pentacles,
this case, there's really no
Four
mystery
of
here.
Wands,
And probably the public would benefit from knowing
Nine of
sooner rather than
Pentacles.
later exactly what these charges are.
I'm going to ask you another question, which you may not know the
There's
answer to. So
there's
I
the plan. There's
apologize in advance, and if
Mar-a-Lago,
you don't know.
so
But,
that he could.
we
Pretty.
saw
These cards are
Alvin
just going
Bragg,
over
come
the case
forward at some
over
point,
and
right?
over and
It was
over.
a somewhat similar process. Trump had indicated he was being indicted, even though he got the timing wrong. Then it was confirmed. Ultimately, Alvin Bragg comes before the cameras to say, "Look, this is what we're indicting with him with. This is why." Is there an expectation that some kind of presentation, some public presentation, will happen from someone of the Department of Justice? I would assume Jack Smith, before or around
Thank you, Mythos
Tuesday.
Dreams.
It's a great question, Chris. It's one that I've been asking, and here's what my reporting is telling me. Probably not. What folks tell me is that Jack Smith has very
Thank you,
little
Gretchen.
interest in being covered by the media, talking to the media. You saw that footage the other day when we tried to ask him some questions outside his office. He didn't even look at the camera. He is a bulldog prosecutor, has been so his whole career, but just has never really
He's also
been
a
that interested in
triathlete.
talking to the media. I know from behind the scenes reporting that some people at the Justice Department tried to get him to at least sort of make some informal outreach to the beat reporters at DOJ. He was not interested. So I don't expect that he's going to say anything. And I certainly don't expect that Merrick Garland or anybody at the Justice Department will do that the way that, for example, people in the Trump Justice Department talked about some of the Mueller cases. Remember Rod Rosenstein going out and announcing, in some cases, some of those indictments. You're not going to see that at this DOJ because their position is we are hands off. This is Jack Smith's show. He's making all the decisions, and it's up to him what to say publicly about this. But I think he's going to speak, Chris, through his court filing.
In terms of timing here, we saw this in New York, and there was a subsequent court date. The ex-president zoomed in for that one. There's all this sort of talk about speed, right? I mean, there's a justice delayed is justice denied cliche that looms over all this, although in some senses that has never quite applied to Donald Trump, who has managed to delay and delay and delay
Thank you, Evelyn.
most of his life. But a more pressing question about the timeline of a presidential campaign, and if this man is guilty of the serious crimes which we anticipate he's being charged with, would he be able to face trial before he perhaps were to be elected president? It would be rendered moot. Do you have any insight into the thinking on time?
Tower
and the
card just
expectations
hanging
on
out.
time?
This is huge. This is
Yes,
huge.
obviously, this is another thing we've been asking around a lot. And so here's some benchmarks. So that remember, Paul Manafort indicted in Washington, D.C. That case took about a year to go to trial.
Thank you, Robin.
Leaving aside, in Alexandria, Virginia, they call it the rocket docket. It went much faster. But in Washington, D.C., it's sort of standard federal arrangement. It took a year to go to trial. Here in Florida, I'm told, I've been calling around, talking to defense lawyers who practice in this courthouse behind us. They say that it depends really on the judge, but there are some judges that really move things along here. That you may see after this arraignment, a trial date set within 70 days or so, and then there will, of course, be delays and arguments and litigation.
Yeah, he's going to delay.
One
He's going to do
big
everything
thing
he can
that the Justice
to
Department's
delay.
taken off the table here. One big avenue for Trump to delay things is venue. Had they brought this case in Washington, D.C., Trump would have argued it should have
Devin,
been
I'm not going to read on
probably
Melania
brought
right
in
now.
Florida,
I
where most of the
but I
alleged
will
conduct happened.
later
Well,
or
they've
tomorrow.
eliminated at least part of that argument
Thank
by
you.
bringing this case in Florida, even though they know that the jury pool here may be more difficult for the prosecution.
All right, Ken Delanian, thank you for sharing all that.
Okay, will it be a
fantastic reporting
will
you've
it be a
been doing
fair
all day.
trial?
I really appreciate it. We will check back in as needed this evening. I'm joined now by Eric Holder, who is the former Attorney General of the United States. It's a great pleasure to have you on, sir. We had booked you this evening to talk about the incredible surprise of the Supreme Court, which upheld a big part of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act throughout a congressional redistricting by the state of Alabama, something you've been very invested in. But you are also the former Attorney General of the United States. I can't imagine anyone who would have more insight into what is going on inside that building, inside the minds of Jack Smith and Merrick Garland on a night like tonight.
Okay, sorry, I have to cut in here for just a minute. Hello, everybody. My popcorn pin on. Okay. I was asking about, will he get a fair trial, right? First of all, we're very happy. World, you're done. End of chapter, end of book. You're done. He does not have a good defense for this. He just doesn't. There's nothing there. This is being held accountable legally. This is in the court. And in the end, big old judgment. Judgment that the whole world is going to hear. Kristen says ABC News says the charges include willful retention of national defense information. Yep. Thank you, Betty.
In a whole bunch of ways, really kind of breathtaking. All the media reports.
He has no defense against this. And yes, he will try to delay. So it's not going to happen in 70 days. But it'd be nice if it doesn't take a year. Okay, let's go back to listening and see what else we can find out. Thank you for being here.
He's equally not going to be perturbed, disturbed, or moved by that which Donald Trump throws at him. Mr. Trump is now in waters that are uncharted for him. There may be attempts at delays, but the federal court system handles, those kinds of attempts. And this is a matter that will ultimately be put before a jury, unless he decides he wants to try to cut some kind of a deal.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, again, he is legally presumed innocent under our system of justice in the courtroom, although American citizens are allowed to form opinions on public matters in whatever way they choose. My general sense, the way this usually goes down, I remember, former Clinton advisor Sandy Berger, quite famously had gone to an archive. He had walked out with some documents which he had sort of stuck in his clothing. He didn't take that to trial.
Kelly's wondering if there'll be a deal.
That out, and my sort of strong suspicion is the way the Department of Justice operates. The facts, as reported so far, is that were this just
yes, be grateful. I turned the volume down a little so people could hear me. I got requests in the chat.
Who was a contractor, there would probably be a strong impetus to try to cut a deal and to.
Oh, he's going to try.
Yeah, I suspect so.
But
given the strength of the case, as I know it.
Yeah, strength of the case. You can't get there from here.
A real attempt on the part of the defense to try to cut a deal such that you would minimize the amount of time that the defendant would serve in jail, the amount of money that he might have to pay. You would try to minimize the punishment. Donald Trump is a different kind of bird. He will undoubtedly try to portray this as the deep state getting after him. He will somehow try to tie it to Democrats' attempt to deny him the nomination and ultimately, the presidency once again. But I think people have, I'm not a political pundit, but I think people have underestimated.
Friends with Monsters said, squeeze the orange.
The American people are going to view this indictment and then others that are to follow, including the one in Manhattan that has already
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
How they're going to view the totality.
Linda Johnson, he's supposed to turn himself in on Tuesday in Florida, in Miami.
And the impact that it's going to have on his political fortunes.
Let me ask you a question about the Department of Justice, just sort of institutionally. I mean, my colleague Rachel Maddow's made this really excellent point before about there's a public integrity unit inside the Department of Justice for a reason. And the reason is that sometimes people entrusted with people's power commit crimes. And in fact, it's not some shocking anomaly to see someone who's elected office. I mean, Governor Rod Blagojevich, the mayor of Detroit, numerous and sundry aldermen in the city of Chicago when I was there. It was almost a weekly occurrence.
Will there be
slightly.
Protesters, riots, that sort of thing?
Public integrity cases in the Department of Justice. This is obviously a kind of difference in kind, but in some ways also a difference in degree. I mean, in terms of your sense of the preparation for the department to bring this kind of case and to see it through, what is your sense of how prepared it is?
I served in the public integrity section when I left law school for 12 years. And so I'm quite familiar with how the public
Okay, bless. But I got to share this with you. I've got to share this with you. Okay, you ready? You ready? It's going to popcorn it. Okay. I asked, will there be protests? Will there be a riot? Will there be, any big thing? They're going to be prepared for the possibility. But I pulled 3 cards. Justice again. Charity, he'll be trying to use it to raise money. But there's a hermit. He's not going to get the big... He's not going to get the big crowd, the rioters, the knocking the door. No. You're on your own. Thank you, Kathy. So, I got that he's going to show up on Tuesday.
The United States, and I'm not minimizing that. That's obviously very significant.
So,
this is not a particularly difficult case on the basis of what I have seen in the media. This is going to be about the retention of documents that you should not have had. This is going to be about obstructing attempts to get those documents back. This is not a routine case, but it is not something that is unfamiliar.
Is he going to have some kind of a medical emergency?
Generally, or the public integrity section specifically.
Yeah, to that point, there was a lot of talk in New York and Alvin's case about whether there was a novel theory that was being used.
Very bland cards
the charges
for
came
it.
out that
Will he have a
like
medical emergency?
In fact, the sort of business records kind of charges that he had are used quite often. The New York Times now just reporting, and I'm just sharing this with you as it comes across here, that Trump was charged with a total of 7 counts, including willfully retaining national defense secrets in violation of the Espionage Act, making false statements, and obstruction of justice conspiracy, according to people familiar with the matter. So it does seem that both elements of that, the Espionage Act, willful retention of defense information, and obstruction are present in those 7 counts.
Yeah, the obstruction thing is the tipping point. If he had taken that material from the Justice Department and had
I don't care about the obstruction part.
But had given the material back once requested, my guess is that we probably would not have a case. But the fact that he frustrated attempts to get back information that he did not have the ability to possess, the obstruction is what makes this case one that
Becca says I'm drinking champagne straight out of the bottle.
This is not an easy decision.
And Becca, if you wanted to, you're welcome to come on with me.
This will be something that the country will be talking about, potentially may divide the country. But if this is to be a nation of laws, if no one is truly above the law, and if you look at the history of these kinds of cases, where people who had almost clerical positions have been criminally charged, how do you give a pass to a president, to a former president of the United States, especially given the obstructive behavior? So again, I don't know the facts. I have not seen the indictment, but the media reports have been fairly consistent, and I think media's done a good job reporting here.
Okay, very quickly. Very quickly. Espionage. Will he be charged with espionage?
Attorney General Eric.
That's Biden's DOJ moving forward. Okay. Fritz Flaber. He has what he has had, which he shouldn't have. Then I get the tower and the star. This is particularly this reinforces this tower. He's so toast. He is seriously, slather him with butter and blackcurrant jam. He is toast. Thank you, Lily of all trades.
She previously served as the White House press secretary in the Biden administration, and Andrew Weissman served as lead prosecutor on special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, as co-host of the podcast Prosecuting Donald Trump. All 3 join me now. Andrew Weissman, let me start with you.
Thank you,
your
Mary.
aptly named podcast. We have worn out the tape of you on our air saying days, not weeks, to the point that, and I will be 100% honest about this. I was on an editorial call yesterday saying, are we sure we're not out over our skis here? We keep saying days, not weeks. Are we going to do this waiting for Godot thing again, where we're just going to be in this holding pattern? So your reaction,
Dave says
saying, having said
espionage
days, not
has
weeks,
no
to it
bail.
having turned out to be days, not weeks.
Let me see what I can pick up on.
Well, without patting myself on the back, I mean, the real issue is that I thought that the Department of Justice, when it was ready, was going to go forward without delay. I've always had the view that Jack Smith and the department, and I think hopefully the judge will have the view that, consistent with due process for Donald Trump, it is very important for the American public to see a public trial and to have a determination one way or the other whether a jury finds that there's guilt or not beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's just so important that that be done, ideally even before a Republican convention, but before an election, so that there's that piece of information that presumably, since I'm still have a lot of faith in America, is going to be important to voters. And I just wanted to quickly underscore something that Eric said, which is the fact that there's so many junior people who are routinely prosecuted for crimes that appear to be similar or less egregious than what the former president has been charged with. That is going to be so important for people to understand. When Alvin Bragg charged his case, there really is a debate about whether or not, if his name were not Trump, how it would have been treated. And Alvin Bragg addressed that as to why he thinks he's being treated the same. But that is something that I think reasonable minds could differ. I don't think that is the case with respect to these charges. It simply is not the case that junior people are being let off, but the president is being singled out. In fact, it would be quite the reverse if he were not charged under these circumstances. You made allusions to an Air Force lieutenant colonel. That was a case where somebody was charged just a few months ago, pled guilty, and was sentenced last week to 3 years in jail with, in a crime that looks far less egregious than what the former president did. So we're either a country of laws where everyone is held to account or not. So this really is a defining moment for this country in understanding the rule of law.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about that, Andrew, I mean, it's just to remember to take the step back here. I don't think you need to have a law degree to think, boy, if the FBI showed at my house and found 100 classified documents all over the place, like, I would probably be in trouble. I just, like, that's obviously the case
Blue, I think
for
that's a
anyone
Google
in
question.
the country of any level, that if that were the kind of, oh, the FBI shows up, oh, you said you didn't have classified documents, well, what's this? Here's 100 of them. If you're writing that in a screenplay, it would be like, that would not be a moment of like, well, we don't know if there's a case here. Now, we've been talking about the law, Jen, and I want to talk a little bit about the politics. Not the politics are primary here, because they're not. I think ultimately the law is what matters.
Yeah.
But it's also just inescapably political, because the guy's running for president. He's the ex-president. He's going to make it political.
Yeah.
And you don't get to sort of unilaterally declare what is.
Oh, see him. He's going to get nailed to the wall. I won't get something specific, but he's going to get nailed to the wall.
The Biden administration handles this, how Democrats handle this, how Republicans in Congress handle this. Like, this isn't Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, who is not part of the Biden administration, and you can heap scorn on him and you can say nasty things about him with all sorts of, pretty gross racist undertones. This is the Justice Department of the United States that Joe Biden is the president of at the moment.
Exactly. I mean, look, I think Trump is clearly, and he already is fundraising off of this or attempting to, and he is clearly going to try to gather the base around him, as he did around the indictment by Alvin Bragg. This case is different for a range of reasons. One of them, just on the pure messaging standpoint, a case where people are trying to communicate publicly and critique about how a former president may have paid hush money to an adult film star is a bit more complicated than this, which is somebody obstructing justice somebody withholding classified documents, potentially sharing them in a way that could harm our national security, that is different. And we should acknowledge that in terms of how it will be communicated. In terms of the White House, the way that I expect they will handle it, Chris, and I don't think this will be any surprise to anyone on this panel, is, Joe Biden is an institutionalist. He believes in the separation of the branches of government. And I suspect they will be very limited in anything they say about this at all, especially in the short term. Now, over the long term, if there are additional indictments, as Eric Holder just said, as Andrew Weissman has talked about, there are ways to, once you get past the pure politicization period of time or the accusation of that, to talk about kind of the value for our national security, for rule of law, for democracy. And there is a way for Joe Biden to do that on the campaign trail and in speeches. But for now, I expect they will be very quiet. Same with Democrats. The last thing I will say is the difference now, too, is that the Band-Aid has been pulled off in terms of Republicans and prominent Republicans criticizing the president. Chris Christie ripped that Band-Aid off. He will, I haven't seen a statement by him yet, but I'm sure he will do that. And I don't know if other will follow, but that will be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, Melissa, one of the first thoughts I had today when I just saw the news right before we sat down to do the show was, again, another distinction here in terms of our, multi-jurisdictional system of justice is that this will be in federal courts, and it will be a test of the courts as well. I mean, we've seen various tests of the courts. We've seen Donald Trump attempt to test the court, particularly in the aftermath of the 2020 election, when the courts, by and large, really did hold.
Ricky asked about what Biden's thinking.
Test challenge
Biden's
poses
president
for the court system, particularly federal courts.
Well, we're going to see this play out, it seems, in the southern
He is a
district
good
of
man.
Florida. That by itself is an unusual
He thinks
choice.
Trump is a
I'm
fool
guided by
and a
my
thief.
NYU colleague Andrew's own analysis here. That may be due in large part to the fact that there is a case currently pending before the Supreme Court, Smith versus United States, that was just argued on March 28th, but has not yet been decided, that has real repercussions about bringing a prosecution in a venue that is improper. So that may explain Jack Smith's quite abrupt shift from the District of Columbia to the Southern District of Florida. So for at least they are thinking, I think, at this point in time, that they're trying to insulate whatever might come down the road from any potential collateral attack on the ground that they brought this in the wrong place. So they're thinking about where it should be and what the courts will say to that.
I didn't pick up that he's going to flee.
This is an administration that was unorthodox in every way, in the way it conducted its business, in the way that it deployed its domestic policy agenda, completely unorthodox. And time after time again, we saw federal courts, including the Supreme Court, stacked with Trump appointees, striking them down and saying, that's not how you do government. And the reason we are here today with a former president being indicted in federal court is because they didn't do government the right way. This isn't a witch hunt. This is about taking documents that were supposed to be the property of the American public and putting them in your beach house in South Florida. This isn't a witch hunt. This is simply about not being able to follow the basic rules of the road and do government properly.
That's a really important point here, right? Because there's sort of there's both a kind of bridge here in terms of a story about the way that Donald Trump has conducted himself in personal life. We, of course, have the extensive and incredible Pulitzer-winning New York Times reporting about his taxes, in which, after getting a look at some of his tax returns for years, multiple tax experts saying, man, this pushes right up and probably over the line of what is actually like criminally actionable, right? In terms of aggressive tax avoidance strategies. We saw it, in terms of, not paying contractors, things like that. But then also this sort of rough and ready, screw the lawyers view of everything.
D. Lamb is asking, what are Republicans feeling?
The things they did with the census, and they tried to get a question on the census about citizenship when they ran roughshod over a bunch of different parts of immigration law. This sense that screw it, don't listen to the lawyers, do whatever you want to do. Like,
they knew it was
this
coming.
Is kind of the
They
ultimate
think it's going to be bad.
That pattern in practice.
Republicans are rethinking.
Well established, Andrew, for
they're trying to figure out what to do.
The guy's public life, some of the stuff that I think you saw,
and they're afraid they're going to go down with him.
And the way he conducted himself as president, the way he's conducted himself afterwards.
Oh, Judas, I'm not going to read on Putin. I'm sorry. I don't really want to go into serial killer energy tonight.
Autocrat who doesn't believe in law or restraint or anything other than his own will and the rule of law. And it is going to be attention. I mean, the courts are going to be, as sort of the last best hope for democracy, are going to be under enormous pressure. We've seen that with respect to Alvin Bragg and the threats to him and his family, with respect to the state court judge and his family. We're going to see the same thing happen at the federal level. We're going to see it, as Eric Holder said, when I suspect we're going to see additional indictments, and it is going to be a test of our democracy and particularly the courts as to whether they are going to have the
doing their duty.
fortitude. And also
Trump
the
just does not have a
by the American public.
Trump just does not have
we
a
are a country of laws,
good
not men.
argument.
I mean, this is such a defining moment and unique for our country to be in this position after hundreds of years.
And Jen, you know, this will take
and this
place
will be
against
good
the,
for the country.
context of both the normal parry and thrust of domestic politics, but obviously a presidential campaign with multiple folks running in that Republican primary, as you just indicated. And I do think, you know, there's a lot of discourse after that, the Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office indictment about, well, is this good for him? And is this sort of backlash effect and a kind of rally around the flag? There's some indication. My position has generally been like, don't overthink this too much. If you kind of had to go behind a veil of ignorance and say, like, do you want your nominee to be facing multiple indictments in multiple jurisdictions for multiple alleged crimes? Like, you probably say no. And
okay, will this hurt the Republicans?
Trump, like, I think that still pertains. And I think it, particularly on the sort of question of national security, I am curious to see, like, to your point about Christie, if other people attack him for him, and also, like, how it does play out in terms of public opinion.
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult, as we all know, to predict the Republican primary voters. But if I were Ron DeSantis or any of these candidates trying to differentiate at this point, they're double digits down, I might make the argument, I'm just as conservative and I'm just as wackadoo, they won't say it like that, but on some of these issues as Donald Trump, but I am not weighed down by the anchor of multiple indictments. I don't have all of this weighing me down. So you want somebody who's going to push the country on COVID, push the country on rule of law, expand and challenge Article 2 of the Constitution.
Will this hurt Republicans? Republicans, a lot of people are already fed up with the extremism. Guess who's here? There she is.
Hey, girl. Hey.
Hi.
Hi. Happy Indictment Day.
Happy Federal Indictment Day. Woohoo.
I was saying we're still waiting on Georgia and January 6th, right?
Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's so exciting.
Indicted twice in less than 3 months. That's just that. I can't. I'm overjoyed.
Yes. I pulled cards, and will this affect Republicans? And what I got was will this hurt Republicans? A lot of voters are already sick of the extremism, the taking women's rights away, all of that. Then will this hurt Republicans? But we're trying to communicate, and it's just not getting through because you guys put that albatross around your necks.
Mm-hmm. I saw today on Twitter, Autumn, that they the Gang of Eight had a meeting, and I wonder if it was about this whole situation. Like,
oh, this is glorious. M. Kelby says it's 10 months to the day since the raid at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, Trump the man. Just a guy. I just pulled just this whole situation. Trump is just a man. He will be hemmed in. It's all coming to light, and that's also my Florida card. And all of the legal swords going into his back. His cards have been horrible for days. And tonight it was just one bad set after another, after another, after another. And it's so good.
I get that there's a meeting with the birds today about a man and what is coming, where he's going to be arriving at. So I think it was this. So, I don't
know if you saw, I got a popcorn pin.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
You're
hang on, let me
like Joyce, not Joyce Wine Vance. Who's the lady on MSNBC?
Not White House.
Lawyer. Yeah. What's her
Wine
name?
Banks. Yeah, it's sparkly. It's a sparkly popcorn pin.
Oh, that's lovely. I love it. I love it.
Oh, wait. There we go.
Whew. I was in the middle of a good novel, and then this happened, and I had to put it down. I'm like, this is better.
Oh, definitely. What are you reading?
I'm rereading ACOTAR again. So, yeah. Oh, Lord. So good.
Yeah, Friends with Monsters reminded me, save the glasses for Tuesday. Oh, yeah, because I've got my big popcorn glasses.
So Tuesday he gets arraigned, correct?
In theory, yeah. But there's what they were talking about in the chat earlier was most likely it would be a sketch artist, and they're not going to release the mugshot right away or something. But there's no way they can keep that mugshot hidden away.
He'll leak it himself. He'll leak it himself to try to fundraise and put it on a T-shirt or something.
Oh, this is glorious. Oh, 3 p.m. Thank you, Trillium Tarot. He has to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday at 3 p.m. local time. Oh. 2 p.m. here. I'll have to come on. I'll have to come on a little late. I'll have to stay on or something on Tuesday.
Unbelievable.
June 13th, day before his birthday.
Yeah.
And I was explaining today on the astrology of why his astrology is so bad right now.
Is it really?
Oh, it's
horrible. It going to get worse as the year goes on?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's all kind of nastiness, but right now he's got just all kind of stuff going wrong in his chart. Just all these inconjunctions going out and just unplugging the energy of various things that have been protecting him.
Oh, I can't. Happy days. Happy days.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Rachel's going to be on with Lawrence tonight.
That'll be fun. I wonder, because she's doing that podcast now, so she's not even doing her shows except on Mondays, and then it's that Alex lady, I think. So they probably
Alex Wagner.
Yeah, they probably called her and said, "Breaking news, we need you on set tonight."
Oh my gosh. Oh, and of course, Truth Social is dying, and
oh yeah.
I was also live golf, live golf. I don't know what the heck it's called. It merged with the PGA. Now the question is, did Trump make any money off of that? But nobody's saying anything. But my thinking is that he was going to make money because they were going to have the events at his golf courses. But now, if Live Golf is merged with PGA has said we will not touch Trump golf courses until they change ownership.
I saw today too on Twitter that the House was trying to pass a bill against Live because they partnered with the Saudis, and people were calling for, just forgive the Saudis for 9/11. It's like, excuse me?
No.
Excuse me? Like, no, that's not how we work around here.
No.
So.
Oh, glorious. Oh, so
fun times.
The electoral process. I think the big thing,
The weightiness of the moment. I think it's a party. Party.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. Yeah, and that's the thing. Is the Teflon gone?
Is that the question?
Yeah. Is the Teflon finally gone?
Not just commit crimes, other people get away with things, but when you do it over and over and over again, this is it's not strange.
I recall growing up in New York City in the 1980s, in which Donald Trump loomed large as a tabloid fixture.
Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. What'd you get?
He's done. He only has the support of a very small, easily manipulated base. That's it. That's it. So his base is his base. Like, you could show them the evidence, just like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. They're not buying it. His base is there. Like, that's it. But everybody else, he's done. Like, he's done.
I got that. I've been able to spin things, an illusion, and cast this little spell. But is the Teflon gone? I pulled 3 cards. I'd say yes, it's gone. He'll work, but he's kind of running in place. And that's going up the river. That is, you're going to court. You're going to trial. And he's not going to win.
Did you see Mike Pence? Was it yesterday or the day before?
On the motorcycle?
He just announced his candidacy for president. And he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, saying that someone that has tried to overthrow the government, this, that, and the other thing, should never be trusted to be the president of the United States. But then in the same breath, when asked by someone in the audience, turns around and says, well, if he wins the nomination, then I will 100%, support him. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? Chris Christie's over there, like, dropping elbows on him, like, just talking smack. And it's like, you guys forget that you all lined up to defend him for every egregious thing that he did. So you either think we're stupid, or you were lying then, or you're lying now. It's like, it's ridiculous. It's have a stockpile of popcorn ready for the Republican stuff, because it's going to be ridiculous.
And thank you, lucky girl. MAGA, make arraignments great again. Oh. I was saying earlier today about Pence that I was married for 20 years. I'm not someone who like gives up on a whim, and I don't have kids. But let me tell you, if my husband had, my husband's boss had tried to kill him and me and our kid, and my husband turned around and he was like, oh, I don't know. Well, he's not all bad. He doesn't belong in jail. Would be done.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I need to take myself and my children away from you because we're not safe.
It's like, here's divorce papers, honey. Have fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Seriously. No. Yeah. No. Oh, Lawrence has been immune to Trump's charges, Trump's charms forever.
Where American democracy is
hear what he says.
Geared up to protect itself against the alleged crimes of a man who was president and would very much like to be president again. Lawrence, how are you thinking about this moment as far as it is a referendum on our ability to self-govern?
Alex, the name of the case, when we see it in writing on Tuesday, is going to be the United States of America versus Donald J. Trump. That is the United States of America, the executive branch, charging the former head of the executive branch, of the United States of America, the government. This is something that we have been headed for when you really reach back and feel our history, that really should have been headed off 49 years ago. 49 years ago, the President of the United States made a terrible mistake. We now
Yes, he
know.
did.
Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon a month after leaving office. Richard Nixon was, beyond a reasonable doubt, guilty of multiple federal crimes that he was a co-conspirator on, for which other people went to prison.
Yeah.
He would have been convicted of federal crimes, and this would be the second time, which, by the way, would be very important to the Trump voter, that this is not the first tortured victim of the law actually reaching into a former president's behavior. And so this is a moment in history that is now unlike any other moment in history. This is making Alvin Bragg feel really comfortable. Because he's going to be
very happy.
He's going to be able to work without
And
a
Letitia
lot of
James.
people knocking on his door, wondering what's going on.
And Fonnie
because
Willis.
This is so much more important in every legal sense. What's going to be happening in this case in Florida?
Yeah, this isn't a district attorney who Donald Trump can call names and harass in the same way. It is the United States government, as you say, the United States versus Donald Trump, Ari. And when we talk about the charges that we are hearing about, the NBC News can report and confirm. Talk to me a little bit about the gravity. We're talking about potential obstruction of justice and conspiracy to make, or I believe conspiracy to make false statements.
Everything changes now. This is a very serious federal case. What started when Donald Trump went down that escalator with all of his very public and brazen promises to overthrow all tradition, standards, rules, law, and norms, to attack the FBI and law enforcement, what culminated in a way on January 6th, which is still under Jack Smith's investigation. Now today, everything changes. The likelihood that Donald Trump is, for legal reasons, unable to continue running for president or assume the office is much higher. The likelihood that he is convicted and goes to prison is much higher. Legally, he is presumed innocent and he's afforded all of his rights. But the biggest problem for him, Alex, and I want to say this quite clearly because we've been following this case tonight, the problem for Donald Trump facing these federal charges that carry years in prison is that he did it and he admitted it. By which I mean, under court order, they got the darn docs. And then he publicly said, even when Hannity and others tried to help him, well, you wouldn't do that. Yes, I would. Yes, I did.
Repeatedly.
I have that authority. And so in that sense, he's legally presumed innocent, and he could still find a jury sympathetic to some less legal, less factual defense. And those exist. Sometimes people feel bad about an officer or a military member on the stand, but what they're supposed to do is follow the facts and the law, and you already have that. And then another related point, the worst witnesses are his own people, as Lawrence and you have covered. We've seen that before. The difference here is you have a current lawyer, you have other aides. It is a serious night, but I do reach for the wisdom of 21 Savage, who said, how many problems you got? A lot. How many lawyers you got? A lot. How many people done left you out to rot? A lot. And these lawyers, including Mr. Corcoran, who has been trying to save himself, making voice notes, who was 4 hours with the grand jury, who was part of why a judge said they were making plans to commit crimes together and they pierced the privilege for crime fraud exception.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't just start in the hole. He starts with a lot of this case, what we would call legally proven.
Mm-hmm.
He's also legally presumed innocent, but he is starting out really, really behind.
Well, just for the layman.
He has just one quick point. He has one less lawyer tonight. He lost Tim Parlatore on May 16th. Tim Parlatore was on my show last night. One thing he did say was that he didn't see how Donald Trump could possibly testify in his own defense in this case. Okay, so that's how bad he thinks this is for Donald Trump.
That's one of his lawyers
that's one of his
saying that.
lawyers saying you can't put him on the witness stand. So if you assume that and then you stare at these allegations as we know them, you start to say, well, how can you defend it? Like, what is the defense? Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time asking him for a defense last night and none emerged. And so that's the state this case is as of right now.
Well, and to be clear, we played some of the sound of Trump's video response to all this. He's not offering a defense of his actions. He's suggesting that the DOJ is committing election interference because these indictments are coming down at the precise moment that he is, of course, running for president in 2024. It's as if he's saying, "Oh, I see your charge. I'll raise you one." This is the legalese that I can spout.
By the way, the king of American election interference tonight uses the phrase election interference about Merrick Garland and the Justice Department.
It is thick irony. I want to bring in Laura Jarrett. Laura, help me out in terms of breaking down some of the charges that we do know about. Obstruction conspiracy. Can you flesh that out a little bit for the layman in terms of what that sort of entails and portends? Because it would seem to imply more than one person.
It would, and you would be right about that. And the important thing to note is that you don't actually have to succeed in completing that conspiracy. And so one of the things I'll be looking for is to see how exactly the special counsel backs this up. What facts, what evidence, what tapes, what documents, who, if anyone, cooperated with this. We need to understand some of the facts that are going to back this up. But just to take a step back, we did not even know about this federal grand jury this time last week. So much has happened over this period, which is just remarkable. It's extraordinary how much has developed here, how the grand jury was working away all this time unbeknownst to us, which really is a reflection on the special counsel's process. Look at how they went about their work, despite all the attacks on the Justice Department, on prosecutors, on the judges, on jurors themselves at times. These prosecutors quietly were working there with lay people in Florida, trying to figure out how to get to the bottom of what happened here. And it really has been a stress test for the better part of the last 7 years as the Trump, while president and now as the ex-president, has tried to take on the government single-handedly and has tried to attack this entire process. And yet the special counsel went on with his work quietly and appears to have got the job done and appears to have secured that indictment from a federal grand jury in Florida. Now, Alex, that doesn't mean that this case will be easy. It doesn't mean that there won't be attacks and that there won't be efforts to try to make the case go away. But I just think it is remarkable to take a step back and recognize where we are as a matter of history and just legally. This is the former president facing federal charges. We are talking about decades in prison if he was convicted. Again, we'll have to see the exact charges, but the Espionage Act, this was reserved for circumstances in which people were trying to attack the United States. Obviously, it can be much broader than that. It's not necessarily
please talk
reserved
about the
just for people
espionage charge.
who were acting
Please,
as
oh,
a
please.
spy, but just to think about what the whole purpose was for someone who held the highest office to be charged with anything remotely close to that should be astonishing to us.
Laura, when we talk about the charges, I know NBC News can confirm making false statements and the obstruction of justice conspiracy. The New York Times is, as you mentioned, reporting that willfully retaining national defense secrets in violation of the Espionage Act are also one of the charges. Do we have an expectation about when this set of charges is going to get unsealed, because it presently remains sealed?
You would think it would come pretty fast, because right now we're operating in an information vacuum. And obviously the Justice Department is trying to play this by the book. And you can understand why, when it's up against, so much pressure, it's trying to hold the line and trying to do what it normally does in the normal case. But this is not the normal case. He's not a flight risk. Everyone knows where he is any minute, at any given second. And so the sort of normal reasons for why you would keep this under seal, I think you might see the Justice Department go and ask a federal judge to get this unsealed so that it can actually make public what has happened here before Tuesday's arraignment, which is where you would normally see it unsealed. I just cannot see this holding until Tuesday.
Yeah, to Laura's point, I mean, Trump is already fundraising off of this. Republicans are beginning to comment. The White House has not commented on this, which I think is quite telling. But one would think that the DOJ would like to get its case out in the open so that it's not just absorbing the incoming from opponents of taking this case in the first place. I guess my question to you would be, do you see The fact that Jack Smith has not said anything, that he quietly moved this down to Florida, that he is going to a jury pool and a potential judge selection that is less favorable to his cause, is that a sign of confidence?
It's certainly a sign of professionalism because he's doing exactly what you're supposed to do under the law, which is not bend or spin and try to find the most hospitable possible jury pool. You're supposed to follow the facts and the law, and that's what we think they're doing. I will say, when we think about how long we've been following this era, and I think us around the table, Laura, others have been steeped in this, Jack Smith has the whole world listening, and he hasn't said a thing yet. And that's a style. Mueller had that style too, but Mueller was always operating with the ceiling of the DOJ rule, so it could never end with an indictment, and Trump took that and tried to exploit that. Smith hasn't said a word, and everyone's listening. So I would interpret what we've seen thus far, that the DOJ, while tonight they gave a standard no comment, and yes, they may say to a judge, this is a little different, let's unseal, but I don't think Mr. Smith, Special Counsel Smith, is thinking about a news cycle of Friday to Tuesday or Tuesday to the following Friday. I think he is looking at, yes, a somewhat more conservative state and jury pool and saying, once we select people who commit to be impartial and understand the rules and present these facts, he thinks with 7 counts, he will win. He thinks he'll win all 7 or the bulk of them. Sometimes you throw in 1 or 2. Prosecutors sometimes do what's called, a menu charge. You think you can prove all 7, but you recognize the jury may waver. But no, he is not running around doing anything other than what he thinks the facts show. And one more point, as we've all been following this, MSNBC viewers have been watching, and what have we learned? Laura mentioned what we learned just from the last few days. Tonight, we learned that Merrick Garland did exactly what he said he would do, that he'd hire a career, nonpartisan professional, someone who oversaw, at the time, big prosecution of Democrat John Edwards, and that he would take the recommendation. And we know under the special counsel rules, had they disagreed, it would be public, it goes to Congress. So we learned tonight that Smith is indicting and that Garland approved it.
Laura, one more question to you. I know you have a busy night. What do we expect in terms of the timeline here? We know that the special counsel, of course, has the January 6th investigation that is not yet complete. What is the expected timeline beyond Tuesday's arraignment date?
Well, certainly the January 6th piece of this is important. And, we've obviously been so focused on just one slice of this for good reason, because he's under federal indictment for it. And so after the arraignment on Tuesday, he'll enter a plea of not guilty, as we would expect. He's maintained his innocence all along. Then he will get discovery, and this will go on for some months. And it's hard to put a timestamp on it. I know everyone wants to figure out, when is this going to go to trial? Could it go to trial in the summer before the election? We don't know. And that's okay. And this will play out as it does in the normal course. The January 6th investigation, that is quite active. There are grand jurors going in to hear testimony on that case all the time, including today. And so we should not take our eye off of that. We reported just yesterday, we broke the news, Steve Bannon, someone who couldn't be more important to the January 6th investigation, obviously a close aide to the former president. He has been subpoenaed in that case. Now, we don't know whether he'll actually go in front of that grand jury, but that could be a meaningful piece of the puzzle here. And so the January 6th piece of this, I think is certainly an open question on that timeline. And even if the special counsel isn't prepared to indict on that for some time, it's worth keeping that in our sights.
Laura, thank you for your time and excellent reporting. Go forth and be successful in more of it. Ari and Lawrence, please do not go anywhere. Stick around with me. I also want to bring in now to this riveting and breaking news conversation, Brandon Van Grack, former national security official at the Justice Department and a former prosecutor on special counsel Robert Mueller's team, and Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC legal analyst. Thank you guys for joining me on this busy night. Brandon, I have been reading your quotes in a lot of news coverage about the move the charging in Florida and the impaneling of a grand jury down in Miami. It was a surprise to many people who are watching this, as we now see Donald Trump has been indicted by a Florida grand jury. What is your expectation about how that changes the dynamics of this at trial?
Well, I think most people speculate that there would have been a preference to try this case in the District of Columbia. You have more experienced judges on these issues, a more favorable jury as well. I think in the end, it doesn't matter, because what this signals is that Special Counsel Smith and his team simply believed that they needed to charge this case in the Southern District of Florida. They did not have venue in DC, and so they charged it in the district where they needed to charge it.
Joyce, it's clear that Trump is doing everything he can to suggest that this is a hoax, to say that the federal government is guilty of election interference. What tools legally, though, does he have to delay this trial or otherwise complicate it at this point?
So he'll have the tools available to him that any other criminal defendant would have, but really nothing more at this point. Look, Miami, the Southern District of Florida, although every judge sets their own pace,
Okay.
Miami is known to be a rocket dog.
First of all, listening to this guy whine is just, it's just enjoyable. I've been reading his tweets during my live streams in toddler temper tantrum voice, and it works really well. It really does. Oh, it's treated so unfairly. Nobody's ever been treated worse than me. And there are some issues where you can rightfully take that sort of an appeal, and others. One of the I've quoted Joyce Vance quite a bit because there's one quote she said came out with a number of months ago, which was, Trump turns everywhere he goes into a crime scene.
Yes. Including the bathroom because he flushed stuff down the toilet. Yes, I'm not kidding you.
It's true. Everywhere, even the bathroom. Exactly. Oh my gosh. And my favorite is just the no president's been treated worse than I have. Go away, Lincoln. I don't want to hear JFK. No one's been treated worse than me. No president ever.
As many crimes as you. That's why.
Good grief. Oh my gosh. I'm getting I do get what?
This lady.
Hang on.
Ultimately, it's sort of based on local practice, but ultimately, you know, exactly as Joyce said, ultimately the reality is you're going to have what appears to be the fact that they're even bringing this case in Florida. I think you have a number of career prosecutors, some of the most experienced prosecutors in national security and public integrity. You have an attorney general who's known for his deliberateness and thoughtfulness. And now you have a grand jury in the Southern District of Florida, all who looked at these charges, apparently multiple charges, and said that the former president not only violated the law, but compromised national security. So in that sense, I think ultimately, regardless of who the judge is, this seems to be quite serious.
Joyce, in terms of the DOJ and the degree to which they put themselves out there to answer questions, do you have any expectation that we will ever hear from Merrick Garland or Jack Smith?
So look, I hope we will, Alex. DOJ prosecutors are limited at the time of the indictment. All the information that they can share
Stephen Colbert is losing his mind.
Contained within the four corners of the indictment. They still have the ability to educate the public. They can't largely defend is guilty. They have to be.
Sorry? What?
I was just asking because the picture of that judge was the one that had initially delayed Jack Smith, and then he took it to an appeals court and they smacked her down. They said, no.
Was that Cannon? Judge Cannon?
Judge Cannon. They just showed her a picture and I was wondering, I was like, oh crap, is it going to go to her jurisdiction? Because girlfriend, you just got smacked down twice by appeals courts for not abiding by the law and giving special treatment. So
well, I this morning, like I said, during my earlier live stream, there's someone in the chat saying it's a different jurisdiction.
Okay.
That Cannon is Palm Beach, and he's going to Miami Federal, whatnot.
In the 305.
Yeah. I've always loved the thing about Lawrence O'Donnell is, do you remember in the early days of the Trump presidency, he would give a speech or something and he'd become president. Everyone's like, oh, let's give him a chance. And then he'd get up and he'd actually read from the teleprompter once. And afterward, they were just like, he's finally becoming presidential. He's finally becoming presidential. And they literally here on MSNBC, that'd be like, oh, Lawrence O'Donnell is here with us. What do you think? And he'd just say, no. Just, and then they wouldn't talk to him as much because he wasn't saying what everybody else was saying, and because they'd go to him and he'd just be deadpan, just no, just immune,
just a laughing stock, a disgrace for 4 years.
Thank you, Rose Blue. Ricky, does Trump have to be in court every day when this goes to trial? I would think so. I would think so. This many charges in a federal court, I don't think you can just tra-la-la your way out of this one. This is not a civil trial defamation. Phone it in.
Or a oops, I lied on my taxes for the last 30 something plus years. I took classified documents from you and then I hid them from you and then I lied to you and I'm still hiding them from you.
And I might have sold some, but we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw some cards on. Will Trump during the trial? So I'm just going to see what I get. You're so toast.
Ooh.
Just go ahead when you're ready.
He will have to appear in court. It will not be public, though. So he's going to have to speak to a party of people, but that party is going to be hush hush. So perhaps what's happening inside the courtroom will not be televised or will be secret in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, he's going to have to show up.
That's the sketch artist.
Okay.
And then they report. The main thing I am getting is they don't want him there. The lawyers, they're there. They're just trying to do their work. And they are, if he's there, when you hire a good lawyer is your advocate. I mean, they are on your side. They want the best for you, and you get the best outcome. And sometimes that means you let them do their job because you don't know everything. And anyone who hires a really good lawyer and then doesn't listen to them is an idiot.
Or lies to them.
Yes. He's right there, and he's expecting them to, he's what are you going to do? Backseat drive? They really wish it's like, look, if we could just muzzle him and just let us do what we do. But with him right there. There was a question earlier about Bedminster, and I didn't read on it earlier because what I've been picking up is that the reason that they have not searched other properties is because what I was picking up, at least for what it's worth, is I think they got a warrant to tap into all of his security cameras.
Okay.
So that at Bedminster and other places, they don't do this big raid. They've already got him for all the stuff from Mar-a-Lago, but by tapping into the security cameras, they can see what he's doing. Are they moving stuff around? Are they, what are they talking about? Where are they putting things that they may not need that? Rachel will be on with Lawrence O'Donnell, apparently, top of the hour. Let me see. Okay, yeah, this one is dying. I just needed to switch it out. Okay.
I get that, yes, Bedminster will eventually be searched, but it also brings another charge of obstruction. So the site, the sun, and the mountains. So there's the danger. There's a success. So yes, it will be searched, but there's obstruction. So like, dude, you just committed you just committed 7 crimes trying to cover up 1 crime. This guy is not smart at all.
No, narcissism is brutal. And I know that there are some people who don't want to say he has that particular mental disorder because they think, well, that that takes away that he has an excuse. It's like no. He was, I think genetically he was predisposed to narcissism, but he didn't have to become what he's become and embrace that and commit so many crimes and all of this. Mary Trump is genetically predisposed to narcissism. She's not. Thank you, Fran.
He just got busted 7 counts for one thing. You could have just turned everything over and avoided this whole mess.
Oh gosh.
And then I just read too, I think it was yesterday, that Mark Meadows pleaded guilty to lesser crimes. I was like, man, y'all, oh, wow.
That's glorious. Well, because everything went through him, because Trump refused to use electronics on January and January 6th. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he pled guilty to lesser charges to get immunity and to cooperate, but you still pled guilty. I don't know what the lesser charges are. They haven't disclosed that, but it's like,
yes,
really
but
good decision to leave Congress to go work for that person to end up indicted yourself. Like, best decision ever. Like, come on.
Well, the thing is though, when he pleaded to, which was it related to this?
That's
in acquiring
related to this, or if it was related to this and January 6th.
Exactly. Because Trump had to get this stuff from somewhere. He didn't go print it out himself.
No. Yeah, they were trying to make Mark Meadows the fall guy. It's like, you dweeb. Like, come on.
And I'm just waiting for them to finally work their way back around to the
to what?
Was it at the Willard Hotel? The January 6th, night before, Roger Stone and Alex Jones and Steve Bannon, maybe, and
Steve Bannon, who has been subpoenaed to talk to Jack Smith.
Yeah, and Ginny Thomas.
Oh gosh. I saw today on Twitter that Clarence Thomas has asked for an extension to file his financial disclosures. It's like, is it really that you can interpret the Constitution, but you can't figure out a financial disclosure statement? So you're asking for extra time. It's like,
what I read on that is someone said asking for an extension, yet another extension to file his financial disclosure forms means he's got a lot of Harlan Crow stuff to hide.
Oh yeah.
Yet more. Allison's asking, will they check Ivana's? Ivana's, well, I mean, that big heavy sarcophagus or underneath it or above it or whatever. because she was cremated, but there was that big heavy coffin that needed eight or 10 guys to carry or something crazy.
And why would you bury your estranged wife on your golf course?
Yeah. Oh, Joyce Matthews says Alito asked for an extension too.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, reading this nonsense.
For a president to indict the leading candidate opposing him, Joe Biden kept classified documents for decades. I and every American who believes in the rule of law stand with President Trump against this grave injustice. House Republicans will hold this brazen weaponization of power accountable. Let's unpack that for a second.
Y'all are next.
First of all,
Y'all are next.
the assertion that Joe Biden is indicting his opponent, his political opponent, Donald Trump.
No evidence of that whatsoever. We have a process whereby, I mentioned earlier, Smith has to have this approved by the Attorney General. I haven't seen any reporting that it was tipped off or involved the White House. It shouldn't be. If there was a smoking gun about that, we'd report on that. So yeah, you have an attack that starts with a lie. The allies of the president have every right to make their defense, which can include trying to say Trump didn't do it, which is hard because, as mentioned, he's confessed to much of this.
Yes, publicly and repeatedly.
They can also make a different argument, which is called selective prosecution, that if you look under everybody's files and under everybody's conduct, sooner or later, that's a version of the, oh, Pence or Biden had a version of this, and this is selective prosecution. Now, those are arguments you're allowed to make in court, but you need evidence, and selective prosecution arguments don't do as well when there's stacked crimes, or when your former lawyer might become a witness against you, because it looks like something that came up from the facts rather than down from selective prosecution. But they have every right to make those claims. The deeper point here is, you know, when you look at Fast and Furious or the Marvel universe and you're like, how many sequels? Like, what's a 10th or a 15th film? Like, this one's not even a sequel, right?
They just keep going.
The hits just keep coming. I've seen so many versions of this argument, of this, shall we say, lying, turgid movie plot that never land. I mean, Bill Barr appointed John Durham for exactly this series of arguments.
Yeah, it's just that the Republicans are absolutely ridiculous. In the chat, thank you, Deborah. Thank you. Also, where was it? There was something up here. Jenny Straunch, I'm going to agree with you. McCarthy needs to go suck an egg.
A rotten one, an old rotten one.
What are you getting for?
I'm not going to stay on much longer because it's like 6:30 and I'm really hungry.
Oh yeah, I need to eat. I didn't have dinner either, so yeah.
So there's the coffin. I asked, will they serve you on the coffin? So there's the coffin, the ship, which means a transfer, and then the ring, which is a promise. So that's looking like a yes, but they need to have something that is very firm that it's there. So either some sort of a witness or a whistleblower, you know, because now you're exhuming somebody. You know, it's not like we have a suspicion. No, it needs to be kind of an agreement or something, something that someone agreed to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, they need a good reason. It has to be solid. But I'm getting this card right in the middle.
What is that? The King of Swords?
King of Swords. So this would be your, it can be a prosecutor, but it can be someone who's making a legal decision. You've got to have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. And hang on, what else did I just see? So there was someone up here who apparently knows. I learned so much from the chat. I really do. But who was it who was saying that it's a casket, not a coffin? Mary Huddleston. It's a casket, not a coffin. The terms are not interchangeable.
Okay. Well, it's coffin in the Lennies.
No. What we were just calling it. No. I just want to throw that out there. I can't promise I'll remember that, but I'm yeah, trying to exhume her casket from private property will not be easy to get a warrant. True. However, after this, I got a Tower and the Hermit. So this would be examining, looking carefully, and this would be That could be earth movers.
Mhm.
That would be a big, big deal where every last thing he's done is looked at very, very carefully.
Kind of like the maintenance guy that accidentally flooded the surveillance camera room.
Are you kidding me?
Oops, we've been draining the pool for eons, but somehow we just accidentally drained it into the room full of all the servers with surveillance footage. Oops. Like,
And what makes it even better, it didn't work.
yeah,
They were so incompetent. You flooded that room and he didn't. No.
I was asking Johnny and Jenny this because it just popped into my head the other day when I heard the news about the guy that flooded the room with the servers for surveillance. So if he flooded the room for surveillance and it can be proven that it was done to get rid of the evidence, right? But then Trump turned around and filed an insurance claim for damages and repairs. Is that also another crime?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I'm not a lawyer, but I'm like, okay, here we go again, committing 20 crimes to cover up one. Like, it's, you know.
What did you get?
Oh, I didn't read on it. I was just asking them out of curiosity. I was like, wait, didn't they just commit another crime? Because you can't tell me, with as cheap as Trump is, that he would come out of pocket for the damages on his own. He's going to go hit the insurance company up for that.
Oh,
you know, even though it was intentional.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it just go ask Letitia James.
Yeah.
Does Trump commit insurance fraud?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I'm hungry too. My blood sugar's going to be funny. Thank you.
I'm going to go get my eat. That's why I was off earlier, because I was going to go to the store to get groceries to make dinner. And then this happened. So I put my book down and I went on Instacart. I was like, deliver my groceries. So I'm going to make dinner right now for myself. And it was so fun. Thank you for having me on, even though it was
thank you.
fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're a
Happy
joy.
birthday to you and everybody.
Yes, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, in that case, that will do it for us for tonight. Yay. Happy day. Happy day. And I'll be back at noon tomorrow Central Time, Chicago time. I'm here every day of the year, and there are so many good days ahead. There are so many good days ahead. All right. Hang in there. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. All right. Take care. See you tomorrow. Yay.